You're watching EVH Gear TV, brought to you by Mike's Music. Visit Mike's Music online for all your EVH and other gear needs. Microphones for EVH Gear TV are provided by Rode Microphones, and official Van Halen merchandise is provided by VanHalenStore.com. Now, here's your host from Ontario, Canada, EVH Gear artist Eric Broadbent.
Hey everyone, happy Wednesday to you all. It feels weird saying Wednesday when it's usually a Friday, but you know what? It's Wednesday, middle of the week. We're halfway through it. EVH Gear TV, you're watching us live, and I'm joined by Autograph's Steve Lynch. Steve, how are you this evening?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Eric.
My sincere pleasure. I think there's a lot of people going to be very thankful this evening as well, too. Huge fans of you and the band for years. Guitar players of all walks of life, and just music fans of that matter. And we'll share a little funny anecdote with a little thing I told you about off the air about a fellow shredder guitar player that wanted me to say hi to you as well too. So we're gonna have a lot of fun, I think.
Okay, sounds good to me.
Awesome. Let's jump right into it. I want to thank everyone for joining in the chat, and probably towards about the 9:30 mark, I'll slip over there and say hi to everyone, and also get into some of your questions for Steve if you have some. If you do have some really good questions for Steve, try to at least get my attention by saying at EVH Gear TV, and that'll highlight my name, and I'll see that pop up a little easier, and that way I can get the questions off to Steve that I hopefully won't miss. So one of the things, Steve, I talk about on the show here a lot is the success of Van Halen and how David Lee Roth had a huge catalyst in that. Now, whether people like the David Lee Roth, they like the Sammy Hagar, they like both eras. There's always that mixed bunch. But David Lee Roth arguably had a lot to do with the success of Van Halen, both in the club days, by bringing dance, material to the band, more swing, more R&B, and against even some of the better wishes of Alex and Eddie and even Mike at the time. But any way you look at it, he was successful in taking Van Halen to the next level. David Lee Roth also had a big involvement with Autograph as well, too. And if you could share with us the story of how a little simple cassette that landed in David Lee Roth's hands led to you being in some of the world's biggest stages and festivals, maybe share that whole story with us.
Sure. We were all just rehearsing what became Autograph later. We were rehearsing at a place called Victory Rehearsal Studios in North Hollywood, California, and we were all playing in different bands at the time. We were all signed with different labels and playing in different bands. I was playing with the keyboard player in Autograph, Steve Isham, on Dreamland Records with Holly Penfield, and then the singer was playing in a group called Silver Condor on Columbia Records. The drummer was in a group called The Coup on A&M Records, and Randy Rand, our bass player, was playing with Lita Ford. Wow. So we just got together on the weekends and just jammed out and wrote some songs and stuff. We were just kind of kicking it around. Well, Andy Jones, the producer, took us into the studio because he had free time at the studio, Gower Studios in Hollywood, and we went in and cut a 5-song demo. And Kenny, the drummer, was jogging with David Lee Roth every morning up and down Sunset Boulevard. And, David asked him what he had been doing lately. And Kenny said, well, I've got this new band that I'm jamming with. We haven't got a name or anything, but he said, I'm playing with the Coup and everything. And David knew about that. But he said, I'd like to hear it. And Kenny said, well, hey, I got a demo in the car we just completed last weekend. And so Kenny played it for him, and David loved it. And he said, hey, what are you guys doing like in January, 1984? And Kenny said, well, we've all pretty much completed, everything that we needed to do with the bands that we're in. We've all completed some tour dates, and we've done the recording with them and everything. So we do have some free time. And David says, well, why don't you come out and open for Van Halen, for a few months? And Kenny said, yeah, let me throw it by the guys. And so he threw it by us, and we went, yeah, hell yeah, we'd love to do it. And so, yeah, of course, why not? Mm-hmm. And so we threw together some more songs. Passed the hat around when we were rehearsing, and got some money up to rent a Winnebago and for gas money and food to make it to the first show.
Nice.
And we drove from L.A. to Jacksonville, Florida. Long ways, okay? Yeah. And we played the first show with them, and it went over great. And all the shows that we did, except for a couple of them, there was Nashville and I think, one other place, I think it might have been Chicago, where they didn't know that there was an opening act, so they didn't really respond to us that well.
Okay, but, right.
It worked out really cool. It was a really great experience, and we eventually got signed out of that by RCA Records because they were seeing us play. They liked the songs, they liked our stage presence and everything, all these different labels, and So there was a bidding war that started, with these labels. And by the time we got up to Madison Square Gardens in New York, we had all these labels backstage after we went on, and they were, throwing pitches at us. And we eventually went with RCA because they offered us the best deal.
Nice.
And signed a 3-album deal with them, and the rest is history.
That's absolutely fantastic. That's one of those things that's almost like the miracles like movies are made on. You know what I mean? It's almost too good to be true. You just,
right.
Stuff's recorded.
It's like a Cinderella story, not
is.
the band, but the actual story.
Yeah,
Cinderella.
yeah. You got a guy jogging with David Lee Roth. The next thing, the similar thing I think happened here in Canada with a band my fiance here loves. She was really into Theory of a Dead Man for the longest time. And similar thing where I think the guitar player singer was at a party, whatever, with Nickelback, whatever, showed him a tape, and the rest is history. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, kind of the same thing again, where the Filipino singer that ended up with Journey, they saw him on YouTube, and that changed his life completely.
Yeah, Arnell, is that his name? Is that his first name?
Something like, I'm not even really sure. Yeah,
that's wicked, I know. So you never know, guys. So there's one piece of advice. First piece of advice of the evening, always have a demo tape or an MP3 stick or something on you somewhere.
It definitely helps.
Yeah. But to go to a tour where we'll probably talk a little bit about some Van Halen biographies and books later on too, but you listen to Van Halen Rising or Noel Monk's book as well too, Running with the Devil. You hear this 84 tour that was just like the juggernaut, even though things were kind of coming apart a little bit behind the scenes. The biggest tour ever at that time, and you guys were there for part of the ride and actually, launching your careers. So just obviously a moment that was probably very hard for you in that moment, probably for the first couple of years of that to even comprehend what was happening to you. That's amazing.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, it was all happening so fast, but I appreciated what happened, everything that happened just seemed to happen in our favor, and it turned out to be really well, do really well as far as sales and radio play and everything. And I think that the most exciting part in my career was actually when we were all on the tour bus leaving for the first tour after we recorded the album, and hearing, Turn Up the Radio for the first time all together. And, it's like everybody, we were jumping up and down, screaming. We all got teary-eyed, and everything. And it was just, what a great feeling to hear your song for the first time on the radio, and everybody in the band's all together at the same place.
Yeah, that's a magic. That's a magic screening. How did you guys manage to keep it all together? Like, some bands just can't do it. When success of that nature comes to them so quickly, how did you guys, obviously maybe good management, maybe good family, I don't know what the secret was, but how did you manage to not derail with all that kind of success?
Well, we concentrated on, making sure that we kept writing. That was the main thing. And we were all, kind of, well-salted musicians, put it that way. That we had been in the studio a lot. We had all toured before, and we weren't young. When that first tour happened in 1984, it happened on January 18th when we played Jacksonville, Florida. I turned 29 years old. Okay. And so we weren't young. I mean, and the other band members like Steve Isham, Steve Plunkett, and Randy Rand were all 2 or 3 years older than me. Okay. And then Kenny, the drummer, was a year or 2 years younger than me. So we look at it like we were all pretty seasoned. And so we knew that, basically to keep this kind of thing going, you had to really put a lot of effort into it. Keep the tours going, keep the recording going. Like when we did the second album, we went in and we banged it out, including mixing and mastering in 30 days.
Wow, that's pretty quick.
So we just like boom, boom, boom. But that's the way RCA wanted it. They wanted a second album out there right away to follow on the heels of the first album.
Perfect. I'll jump over the chat real quick. Actually, I was going to wait till closer to 9:30, but we're getting a lot of people in there, and if I don't go now, we're probably going to miss a few people. So I'm going to say hi to a bunch of people jumping in. Justin Gardy's jumping in. I've got the Frank J.C., Quentin James jumping in as well. Jack Shea Martin. Carlo Santin says, very cool. Darren Moore, rock and roll, says, autograph rocks. Lyle Ketchum. Let me see here. He said, well, YouTube let me in time to see the opening. All right, good to see you. Insomniac Matt says, there's a good pun. He says, I wonder how many people are going to ask Steve to turn up the radio. Love it. The Law.
They always do.
I know. Probably even if you had a nickel for every time you were asked that, right? Probably be more than some of the royalties on the records, I'm sure.
Be retired right now.
That's right. The Law is saying, hey folks. Neil Bambury says, hey Eric, hey Steve, massive fan here. Guitar Corner is in saying, very awesome. Tactical 16 says, when I bought my first real guitar, Ibanez Roadster 2, a Roadstar, back in the mid-'80s, I bought Autograph's first album the same night. Just recently learned Turn Up, I'll Always Like That Riff. Very cool. That's a nice one.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Great, thank you for that. Yeah.
Ty Price, I was 13 years old when I saw Steve open for Van Halen '84. That's wicked. That's only 2 years older than my son. That'd be a great experience. Been a fan ever since. Terrific guitar player and great tone.
Oh, fantastic. Well, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Love that. Darren Moore says David Lee Roth is a man. He's definitely a David Lee Roth advocate, as a lot of us are, so that's very cool. Chad Boston is in here saying, what's up? Blimpus Rocks videos. Yeah, he commented, said, yes, Arnell for the singer of Journey. Carlo Santin says, I remember a Van Halen show in Toronto, early 90s, Sky Dome. Alice in Chains was the opening act, and they got an ugly reception from the crowd. Lane Staley ended up spitting out the crowd. So it can happen.
It can.
But you know, the cool thing is with you, you know, they let's say they come, they don't know who you guys are yet. They hear you play guitar, and even though you might have those guys that are standing there like this, you know, they always get it. Then they hear you play guitar, and I think that might have been, okay, all right, I think we're going to give these guys a chance. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, hopefully that's the case.
Yeah, and I think that's probably happened for you a lot. Let me see here. So Chad Boston was up, my friends. Great raw story from Carlo. Paul Perkins says, Eric, really appreciate these podcasts and giving artists a platform to share their stories. Certainly, thank you, and I'm glad that you tune in. I said
it's a very cool thing. It's a very cool thing. I'm glad you have this going.
It's fun, and I always tell people in the chat and through the forums, I say if it wasn't for you guys tuning in, people like yourself wouldn't come here. You don't want to come here and just sure you just talk, but you want to have a bit of an audience and share your story as well too. So it's the full circle with people tuning in. Cloreen Baconskin's jumping in, says, nice midweek show. Let me see. Okay, here's a gear question right off the top. A real simple one. We always talk about strings and string gauges or maybe brands. Insomniac Matt's asking, what strings do you use?
I use Ernie Ball, and I just played the 9 through the 42s, the pink package. That's it.
The super thinkies.
Even though we're tuned down a whole step, I still played 9 through 42s because I'm a very aggressive player. When I pick and when I hammer on, I'm doing it really hard. I mean, about as hard as you can.
Right.
And so what I've learned is through all the years, I haven't been able to lighten up, even though I've tried it so many times to lighten up my playing. Like, Steve, lighten up your fingers a little bit. You're going to bleed, you know. And I've had 2 operations on each hand for carpal tunnel and everything, and they said either you've got to stop playing or you're not going to be able to play. And so I said, to hell with that. You know, I'm just going to keep playing.
Sure.
If my hands are messed up later on, fine. But at least I'm going to get my playing in. Right. And pay my dues. You know. So anyway, I do have to lighten up sometimes. Sometimes my hands cramp on stage because I just play so aggressively. Especially if we do like an hour and a half set, that can happen. But what I found was keeping to the lighter gauge strings. You know, to overcompensate for bending, I had to really pay attention to that. Bend a little bit less because the strings are a lot more flexible. Yeah. But I think that staying with the lighter gauge strings is going to help with my longevity.
I like that, and I like the 9 to 42 in a drop half step down. I do that as well. A lot of guys do, especially the Van Halen era, right? For lighting, trying to lighten up on the attack, I'm sure you have. Have you tried from thinner to thicker picks and anywhere in between just to get that lighter dynamic too? Has that been any of a help for you?
I use a medium. I use a 60.
Okay. Yep.
60, and that usually seems to do fine. If I use a thicker pick, I start breaking strings.
Oh, okay.
Because of my aggressiveness with the picking. Yeah. So I'll do a harmonic and the string will pop. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because I really hit hard when I do false harmonics, so the string will just pop right away. So I got to be careful about that. I have to have a little bit of flex in the pick.
Gotcha. Yep. And I think that does help too, getting into pinch harmonics. I was comparing last night doing a show with thick picks, and I was doing it on the air with a thick pick and a thin pick, and I said, okay, let me see if I'm overanalyzing myself. And I was actually getting a better pinch harmonic with a thinner pick of 60. So
yeah, you can.
Yeah.
It's a different technique that you have to use. You have to use more of the side of the pick when you're using a heavier pick. You notice that. Yeah. Where it is, what's really getting the sound is your thumb hitting the string.
Yeah. So
after that picked portion of the harmonic.
That's right.
You see.
Yep. Yeah, it's muting it out and kind of giving the harmonic. The thumb is doing the harmonic almost. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. Very cool. Okay, here's a question from Carlo, and this is a question I actually had on the itinerary for the evening. So let's jump right into it. He says, "What kind of gear are you playing through these days? What are your thoughts on?" This is almost like he's reading my mind. He says, "What kind of gear are you playing through, and what are your thoughts on some of the modeling gear out there?" So to echo that question, so we can do a basic, like kind of a basic rig rundown, what you're running. And I was going to ask you as well, are you one of these guys where you're a pedal guy, are you a modeler guy, or a combination of the both? So let's kind of share some of your gear love.
Okay, well, what I'm doing live is I'm using the Marshall 2000s, and basically they're supplied by the venue or the promoter wherever we play. And a lot of bands are doing that now, where they just and a lot of bands are playing through the Marshall 2000, so it makes it very convenient for the back line company to supply that. And I'm using the dual one, not the triple one, just the dual one. Very simple, and I play it through the clean channel. And but I just like the tone of it. And then I'm using the ME70, the Boss ME70 multi-effects pedal.
Nice.
Because what I do is I carry on my back, I carry 2 guitars and in a double gig bag, and then I have like my wireless unit in there, and then in my suitcase I actually have in a backpack I have the ME70. Now I just bought the ME80, so I'm going to be programming that one. So I'm using some of the modeled sounds and stuff in there. But I used to be a big pedal guy, and I used to go out and buy all these old pedals. If I was to use all the pedals that I love, I would have to have 3 pedal boards, period, because I there's so many that I like, and then there's new ones coming out constantly. I kind of have to refrain from doing that because I try to keep it real light. It's just a carry-on and my double gig bag, and I can get on the plane that way. I can travel. We do so much, but we fly to most all the gigs, and sometimes we drive in between a couple when they group them together where it's close enough for us to drive. But most of the time we're flying to everything, and everybody's doing it that way. Simon, the singer, and so same thing with Randy, the bass player. They all carry their guitars in double gig bags as well, and it makes it real easy that way. But yeah, it's just the ME70, and I'm able to program the sounds that I want with that, combined with the sound of the Marshall 2000.
Now, are you doing kind of a combination of some of this effects going to the front of the input and some to the loop? Or are you going strictly everything to the front?
I'm going right directly into the amplifier.
Wow, nice.
Yeah.
And overdrives out of that unit as well, too? Or are you relying more on the overdrive on the Marshall?
I'm just relying completely overdrive and all the effects just off the pedal itself.
Isn't that something? That's good to know. So there you go. That's the ME70, and then you said you've got the ME80 that you're going to be replacing the 70 with now?
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's got improved sounds in it and everything, and I kind of demoed it a little bit in the store.
Nice.
And then I contacted Roland directly, and they sent one out to me, and so I've just yet to program it. That's all.
Now, can you take some of your patches from the 70, save them to your computer, and bring them more to the 80? Some of the ones that you've kind of tailored that you really like, or are you just going to kind of start fresh?
I'm going to start from scratch again.
That'd be nice.
I want to change up a few things. I pretty much know what I want, and so I'm just going to start from scratch again.
Good.
And I know how to program it quickly enough where I'll be able to get those sounds in no time at all.
Yeah, you spent the years learning it as it was, so there'd be no real learning curve other than just some new processing power.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Awesome. Well, that's a nice plug for those guys. They're good people over there for sure.
Yeah, they're really good people, and just the fact that I don't have to use another, like an anvil case or something to carry my effects around in, this just makes it real easy, all in one pedal like that.
I like that. Yeah, as long as you got a Marshall of some sort there for you for the back line, you plug in, you're going to have your consistent sound. Love it.
Yep, and it's so reliable. It always works. I never have any problem with it. So hopefully it'll be that way with the 80 as well. So I'm sure it will.
Awesome. Well, I wish you luck with that one as well too. A couple other people jumping in too. Scary Groove. He runs Patrick DeCola runs a really cool George Lynch website, scarygroove.com. He's saying hi. Access Mario says
very
hey,
cool.
Erkanal.
Hello.
Yeah.
Who's the guy at the beginning of the show that you said hi?
That was Justin Girardi, I believe.
Okay.
No. You mean the guitar player?
Or if he's still on there.
Oh, you meant even the guitar player. Are you talking about Rusty Cooley?
Yes.
Rusty Cooley. I got to share a little story. We're going to jump over this stuff.
Hey.
Yeah.
Great player, man. Love your playing. If he's still listening, amazing player. Amazing.
I'm not sure if he's actually yet. He's going to be tuning in. I think he's finishing up a guitar lesson, but he's going to tune in for sure.
Cool.
I talked back and forth. He's a Dean artist as well too, and he was kind of showing me.
And I have one of his guitars.
Aren't they great? Which one? Do you have the Zenoside?
Yeah, Spider down at Dean Guitars gave me one. I'm only about 25 minutes away from the factory here.
I know they're right down in Florida. Exactly, I know.
Yeah.
Was speaking with Spider and actually Josh is over in China at the moment, but yeah, speaking back and forth with both those guys. And Rusty's always he likes sending me pictures and stuff, and he sent me something kind of something that's coming, I guess, from Dean. I won't say too much about it. And then I was talking to him tonight before the show, and I said, hey, I got another Dean artist on here tonight. And I said who it was. And he says, well, please say hi. And I know you can't see this yet, and you've got the pictures. You can take a look later. The audience will see these pictures, and then when you watch the show back later, you'll see them. But I'm going to switch over to that screen for a second. Here's Rusty Cooley holding the right touch, the art of hammering notes with the right hand. And I thought this was so cool with a shredder like Rusty Cooley, and he's proudly holding up this book by you, which has a fold-out record in it, by the way, too, which is awesome. You don't see that these days.
I know. That's antiquated in itself right there.
I know.
But check out the white boots. The white boots are just,
I see that.
In the black outfit with the white boots.
And a vest.
I wasn't thinking at the time, wow, these are really going to stand out. Shoes standing out. Yeah, of course they are.
I love it. So thank you, Rusty. That was really cool. Him and I were chuckling. That's really great. So he's going to be tuning in tonight for sure. And he's a cool cat for sure. I love that. Yeah. Continuing down the line, Quentin James has maybe a rig rundown. So, we touched base on that one. Max Rader, love She Never Looked That Good to Me. The Lost says, Chad, thank you for getting those Line 6 Helix screen. Okay, he's talking about some Helix stuff.
Cool.
Yep, I got the Helix back here as well, too. Really digging that thing.
Very cool.
Yeah, tremendously. And he said, Chad says you should get the Helix. You can check that out sometime as well, too. But if your boss is working good for you, rock with it.
I want to try the Helix. I'm always up for new things, so that's another thing I'm going to be checking out very soon here. Absolutely. It's
something I think you will not regret for sure. I'm not trying to upsell or take anything away from Boss because I have a million other products here as well. I love them to death, but it's a different tool. And what I really like about
and that's what I've heard. I think Mark Slaughter was telling me about that.
Yeah.
He was using. He said, "Steve, you got to check this out." Unfortunately, the last show that we did with him, just like. 10 days ago or so, up in Connecticut, the Mohegan Sun.
Yes, we
played a gig with them and Vixen, and he said, "Steve, you got to check this out," and everything. So I've got to call him. I just totally spaced on calling him about this, but if it's something that fits into my suitcase and easy to cart around, I'm totally into it.
Yeah, and you could do that. One thing I did like about those guys when they come on the show, a couple of the execs from Line 6. What was so cool about those guys is they did not slam any of the competitors. You've got your Fractals, you've got your, your everything, your Kempers and all that kind of stuff. Boss as well too. And they said, ours isn't. We're not saying ours is any better than theirs. It's just another tool in your toolkit. And I really respected that.
Right.
And it really makes you like the product a lot more when you have someone that says try them all, and they each have their benefits, right? So yeah.
And use what works for you.
Yeah, exactly. It may or may not be for you. So very, very cool.
Right.
Let me see. Says we have a lot of Helix guys here. He says let's just get this guy a Helix. Yeah, there's a Helix. Don Shepard.
Send it my way.
There you go.
Send it my way.
Send him one. Don Shepard says, why not the GT100? Are you familiar with the GT100?
The DC100.
The GT100. That'd be the Boss, right?
Yeah, I haven't used that one.
Okay.
I haven't tried that one out.
I haven't tried that one either. Let me see here. Wow, everything from the ME70. That's surprising but interesting. That's from PDX Guitar Freak, and that's another Line 6 guy. Jeffrey Monroe says, wow, that's an amazing gentleman. Very cool.
Thank you.
And you're getting some compliments on you're looking good for your age. I won't say what your age is unless you want me to say your age.
Well, I'll say it.
Okay. 52, 57, right?
I'm 62. I'll be 63 January 18th of 2018.
Perfect.
And you know what? Life just gets better.
It sure does. And I think guitar does a lot of that for us as well, too. I think that keeps
absolutely
all of us
playing
young.
Music keeps you young. There's no doubt about that.
I love it. It is. It's something that you'll cherish for the rest of your life. And like you said, you were worried about arthritis setting in and things like that, or the carpal tunnel, I should say, which can lead to arthritis and things like that. And as long as you're enjoying it, screw it, right?
Yeah, and just try to keep from getting those operations like I did on each hand. Like I said, I had 2 operations on each hand to keep playing. But if you do start developing carpal tunnel or anything, just lay off for a while and try to lighten up on your playing.
That's right. And I think another piece of advice, too, that can help people, and I was a victim of it as well, too, and I'm actually doing it right now. I'm sitting here with poor posture in my chair. And if you're working at a computer a lot, don't skimp out on your if you're at your office place, talk to your bosses and say, I'm not sitting properly. My chair is uncomfortable. My desk is uncomfortable. It's very important to have proper posture when you're doing a mundane task all day long. And that can mess you up. Yeah. So just a little tidbit there as well, too. Let me continue on down the line. So the Tactical 6 Strings had the ME50, 70, and the 80. So lots of love there for sure. Best part about it is being able to plug it right into the front of the amp. Very cool as well, too. Okay, and another question: Has Steve ever tried any of the Line 6 product? Have you tried any Line 6 to this? You've probably
Oh
tried
yeah,
pods and things like that.
yeah. I've had the pod and everything when they first came out actually, and I still have the mini pod,
Oh
and I
yeah,
love the sounds on that.
yeah,
So yeah,
very.
absolutely. No, Line 6 makes some great stuff. There's no doubt.
They do. Paul Perkins has a very good question. Then we're going to jump back into some Van Halen questions, and then we're going to get into your new album. Paul Perkins
Uh-huh.
says, "What artist would you most like to jam with?"
Oh God, probably. I would have to say maybe David Gilmour.
Nice, nice.
Yeah, because I could see us doing, something, like out of, like the ending of like a minor B minor jam, and
Hmm.
like at the end of Comfortably Numb or something like that, and trading off some just tasty licks. It would be him, and it would be Jeff Beck. I've never had a chance to play with Jeff Beck, and he was a huge influence on my playing.
Yeah, and the thing is too, Jeff Beck is on that list of. We don't have a lot of guitar heroes left in the world. Sadly, we're losing
Yep.
talent daily. Today was another good example, or bad example, I should say, a good example of losing something good, or what I'm trying to say. Um,
Hmm.
but Jeff Beck is up there. We got the Jeff Becks, the Keith Richards, the Eddie Van Halens,
Hmm.
Jimmy Page, so on and so forth. Those are kind of the more senior. I don't want to say old guys, but the senior
Yep.
guys. You know what I'm saying? As opposed to.
Right, and I think that a lot of guitar players that are in my age group, like I'm a week older than Eddie Van Halen.
Okay.
George Lynch, he is. His birthday was in October, so he's a few months older than me. But we're all within just a few months of one another,
Hmm.
and I think that we grew up on the same bowl of cereals as like having Jimmy Page, having Jimi Hendrix, having Jeff Beck in there, Eric Clapton. So we were all listening to the same guys, the really big famous guitar players at the time. The last people that I really listened to is I started listening to Al Di Meola
Nice.
a lot. I love that album, Elegant Gypsy. And I really got into Alan Holdsworth. And he was the last one that I listened to. That 1978 album called UK. It had guys from Genesis in there, of
Hmm.
course, Tony Levin and Bill Bruford on drums and all that, and
Amazing.
Alan Holdsworth on guitar. I think, and then also the album Enigmatic Ocean with Jean-Luc Ponty. I learned a bunch of Jean-Luc Ponty's pentatonic riffs, on violin. He's an incredible violin player.
Hmm.
But I transcribed those and I learned what he was doing on that. And I also got into like Charlie Parker and was trying to figure out what he was doing, on saxophone, trying to figure that out on guitar. And that kind of opened me up a lot. And that's another thing, going into the Guitar Institute when I went there, it was like still in the developing stages. It was all jazz guys there. I was the only guy there amongst all these guys. They all had, hollow body guitars. The Gibson 175s, and the
Hmm.
thinnest one was a ES 335. And I'm the only one with a solid body guitar with bell bottom pants and platform shoes and a shag haircut and a leather coat.
Uh-oh.
And so they just kind of looked at me like, "What's this guy doing here?"
Are you looking for directions?
It was a very cool experience because there was not one other rock guy there. There was a few blues guys there, but it was mostly all jazz guys that were in my class, and there was only 60 people in my class at the time, and when there was only 30 that graduated because there was a high dropout rate because it's really tough to keep up with the curriculum there. Back then, it was only 1 year, and they had 4 years worth of stuff in that 1 year.
Wow.
So I had practiced 12 to 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, and I didn't take one day off the whole time I was there. And I barely kept up with the curriculum.
That much. Wow.
It was what an amazing experience, though. It was just incredible, the whole thing.
So after you exited there, did you find that kind of opened up the door for a lot more rock guys, and it became kind of the norm?
Yeah, it helped with me going there, and they said that as time went on, more and more rock guys did come in. But I think that it helped that, after I went there, and I was the first, graduate to get a gold or platinum record. So I went down there to do the photo shoot, and they used that photo for a long time,
Nice.
me holding the gold platinum records and them showing that in their
This
ads
could
and
happen
saying,
to
hey,
you.
this is what you get,
Yeah.
if you come to the Guitar Institute, which is not really the case, but
It could.
it ends up being one of those things where you just you're really proud to go back to kind of where your roots were, and
Certainly.
what kind of put you on that whole path to success. And so it was really cool going down there and seeing the guys again. And since then, I've been back and done a couple of clinics down there. So
good.
Great people down there.
And see some new youth inspired, this, full of, hopes and dreams, and the music business hasn't corrupted them yet. But I mean, it's nice to get to meet some of these young guys and girls and give them some advice and point them in the right direction.
Yes, absolutely. And when I was doing clinics, like right after, Autograph split up, that was like we literally ended the 80s because we split up in December of 1989. So it was like right at the end, So what I did was I did a bunch of clinics. I was promoting my books. I was promoting St. Louis music, which did Ampeg, Crate, and all that, and Alvarez acoustic guitars and stuff. And I was out doing clinics, and I did 325 clinics in 20 different countries. I did all the United States. I did Canada. I did most all of Europe, a lot of South America and Mexico and New Zealand and Australia. And it was really cool meeting all these guitar players in all these different places. They all had that one goal in mind, and that's what can I do to like really, really stand out. And I told them, hey, come up with a unique sound. Don't sound like anybody else. Like if there's already an Eddie Van Halen out there, don't try to sound like him.
Right.
You can borrow some stuff from a lot of different guitar players, but then you should expound on it. You should experiment with it and make it your own. Take their idea and then experiment and make it into something that almost sounds like you created it.
Right.
And that's what I was doing, with the guitar players that I learned from. And like I was saying before, the last person I listened to was Alan Holsworth. Then I stopped listening to guitar players completely after that point. And that was 1978. And I just went, that's it. I'm not listening to any guitar players anymore because I want everything to be mine. I want to own it. And so I did. I threw away a lot of the licks that I knew and everything, and I just worked on really trying to, come up with my own sound and everything. And it kind of forced me into that mold of like, okay, now I have this technique. And I'll explain how I got into that technique as well.
Sure.
I started doing it about 1971, early on in my playing, when I saw a guy named Harvey Mandel doing it. He was doing it with a couple fingers on the neck, playing, a couple extensions of chords and stuff like that, like Johnny Smith does.
Sure.
They add extensions on. There's this one guy out of Italy as you can see a black and white video of him playing this incredible stuff on a classical guitar, doing the two-handed stuff. And so he has two different counterparts happening at the same time, and it's really cool to watch. But I got into it at that point. There was a guy in Seattle named Steve Buffington, who's a really good player, and he showed me a couple things as well, what you can do with two hands on the guitar neck. And then when I went to the Guitar Institute in beginning of 1978, there was a gentleman named Emmett Chapman, the inventor of the Chapman stick, that did a clinic there.
Yes.
And while he was doing the clinic, he mentioned in there that he got so far with guitar, he basically wanted to come up with an instrument that could accompany him better on playing the two-handed technique, in which came the Chapman stick. And but I asked him after the clinic, because a light bulb just went off in my head. I thought, I'm doing this technique already, and I have been for, at that point, like 7 years already. But when he said that, I cornered him after the clinic, and I said, what were you talking about, guitar? And he says, can I see your guitar for a second? And I handed it to him, and he showed me like the regular root position of A minor pentatonic, and then he went up here and played, two positions above it with his right hand, and just went, and I went, that sounds so cool. There's such a great legato sound to that, because you don't hear any pick attack or anything.
No.
And then I just took everything. It was great because it was at the beginning of the year when I first started going there. So I started writing down all the positions of all the scales and how to play them two-handed, and then playing them using different interval skips. Like I'd play in fifths, I'd play in fourths, I'd play in octaves, and all these different ideas. And then I started playing different number sequences with triads and arpeggios and all that, and like just interval skips in general, jumping all over the place and jumping different strings with it and experimenting. Everything I got from the school, including all the chordal stuff and everything, I figured out how to do it two-handed, and I was jotting it down, and that led into my first book being published right at the very end of where I graduated. Like the next day after I graduated, I met with it was Howard Roberts, the famous jazz guitarist, who saw me playing, at the graduation ceremony, and all I did was I just did a couple of songs that just had all that stuff in it, all instrumentals, and they were knocked out by it because I hadn't showed anybody how to do that except for Jennifer Batten.
Okay.
Was going there the same year
There
as
you
myself,
go.
who I was showing her ideas, and then she was taking them and doing her own thing with it. She just became amazing at it.
Yeah.
And so it was really cool sharing these ideas and everything, and having somebody like Howard Roberts recognize what I was doing. And Tommy Tedesco, who was the number one studio player, in Los Angeles for years and years and years. Everything that you heard on TV during the 60s and everything, that was all Tommy Tedesco.
Wow.
So he went down there with me. Him and Howard both took me down to Dale Zdenek Publications, who was right there in Calabasas. And Dale signed me right away. As soon as he saw me playing the technique, and I showed him how I had written it out, using different shapes, using, a circle for the hammer-on, a square for the pull-off from right hand to left hand, and then a hammer-on, using a triangle if you're hammering on with your left hand. And if it's a pull-off, then it's a diamond shape. And so you have these 4 different shapes going on. And I showed that to them, and they absolutely loved the whole technique and how I did it just on guitar graph. So you could see exactly what the shapes looked like. Like, say, for instance, if I'm playing a G major 7 arpeggio with my left hand, well, I can play the 4th above that, and I can play a C major 7 arpeggio, and I can do it two-handed like that because they're both in the same key. It's the 1 and the 4 chord. Okay, you can do the same thing with the 2 and the 5, or the 2 and the 6 chord. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's like you've got minor on minor, major on major, and you can mix it up whichever way you want to, as far as intervallic designs or sequencing the notes, whatever you want to do. And it was a cool experience, writing it down and then having it get published right away. And that's when I was doing the clinics years later, I went on to, doing the clinics that basically showed people how to do that. But one of the most important things I did mention in the clinics is to really try to create something of your own. Like I said earlier, try to take a little bit from each different person, but then try to make it into your own thing. And what a lot of guitar players, and I'm still teaching now, just like Rusty is, I've hopefully finished up with this lesson.
Yeah.
And is I try to tell them to write as much time as you're practicing, you're shredding, and creating your own sound and everything. Write as much as you can. Use that other 50% of your time to write, and even learn how to sing.
Nice.
And learn ear training. That's a big part of it too, is being able to really know your ear training. Really know how to hear notes, how to hear chords, and all that kind of stuff, because that really plays into your writing as well.
And improv.
And so, you can get these kind of things, out of online. You can find them left and right, just ear training techniques for the guitarists, and it's a really good investment. It's one of those things that can really change how you play and how you hear things drastically. But always write. If you're writing something, take it the next step further than what you're listening to, or just take a part of that writing that you hear and take it into a different direction. Any way that you can make it your own and make it pleasing to the listener.
Sure.
Don't try to corner yourself into one particular thing. Have a variety of different sounds and everything that you're working with. Because when I plug in and I play, when I change a sound, it makes me play differently. Yeah. When I go into a clean sound with some really cool chorusing, stereo chorusing effects and some delay in there, it makes me play completely differently if I'm just playing, with distortion, playing with the lead sound. And of course that makes you write differently as well. So that's a really good tool to use, is different sounds, experiment with different sounds for your playing as well as your writing.
Pitch changing, all kinds of things, weird things that would sound very weird and out of context of a band situation, but all of a sudden you come up with a really cool riff because you're using a harmonizer or an octave or, a pog, anything of the sort, kind of crazy things. And I think for people that don't understand the way you're describing, some of the people that aren't guitar players watching the show, and you're trying to describe all the different shapes, I look at it almost as writing out a football play or a basketball chart. You know what I mean? So if you can picture this, we're going to do this and this type of thing. That's what you're doing to demonstrate the different ways you can do the tapping in the different positions. That's what it felt like to me. Yeah.
And so, what really helped was, like with that first book that, Rusty Cooley held up. What really helped a lot of players is that, around the time that came out, that's when, Eddie Van Halen, of course, was doing the technique, and he first got heard, and Eruption came out and all that. And I went, oh, cool, somebody got it on the radio. And this is exactly what I'm explaining at the same time. It's like what a great coincidence, that it kind of all came together like that. And so he was doing, more of the triplet stuff. But what I delved into was a lot more of jumping onto different strings.
Gotcha.
And that's really what I concentrated on. Yeah, you can do it on one string and do the triplets, and it sounds really cool. But if you incorporate different things, like in your theory, like the arpeggios and the triads and the interval skips and all that, it's gonna be really something that just stands out. And everybody that I show this to, they kind of put their own spin on it, and it really works out well for them. I have a couple of students that are doing really well with it right now.
Cool. Can you share their names, or you want to toss them out?
Pardon me?
Can you share? You want to share their names?
Yeah. Well, Kevin Pike is the one that's really really coming along really great with it. And he's a GIT guy too, but he happened to live down here in Florida. I was teaching his brother up in Seattle when I had my music school up there. That I had going for 10 years, and then I just moved down here about a year and a half ago. And the weather's better down here in Florida, by the way.
Yeah, I'll bet.
It's a little bit better in Seattle. I love Seattle. Don't get me wrong. I love Seattle. It's the coolest city, but I just love the weather down here, no doubt. But you know, it's one of those things where you know, having the theory and everything, I kind of got lost where we were.
Oh no, it's okay. It's just basically the instruction and everything, and you nailed it right on the head for sure. Justin Grady has a question. He says, "Has Steve ever had the chance to try any of the EVH gear?" Speaking of Eddie Van Halen, have you tried any of his new brand products at all?
No, a couple of times. They had, you know, their amplifiers. They said, "Hey, can you use the EVH stuff instead of the Marshall 2000?" I said, "Yeah, sure." You know, and I plugged into it, and I plugged straight into it just the first to see what it sounded like, basically, and went through the clean channel, went through the dirty channel, and it sounded great. What a great sounding amp! Really cool. And Jose Arredondo, who was the guy that was modding all of Eddie's amps at the time, who was also the same guy that I was going to, and then I found out he was going to him as well. But Eddie made him really popular to the point where, you know, nobody could get their Marshall heads in to see him. There was like a year waiting list after a while. But you know, I had mine modded a little bit differently, you know, but they you know, he was so good at just getting whichever sound you wanted to get out of it. And I brought in 50 watts. I brought in 100 watts, you know, and had him mod them, and just really have him hot rod them as hell is what I had him do. So, you know, but and I'm sure that Eddie took a lot of Jose Arredondo's ideas and put them into that amplifier, because I could hear it when I put directly into it.
Gone from from the PVs to where he is now with the you know, the EVH brand as well, so more gain and, you know, just beautiful sounding amps. Carlo Santin, here's a question on the business, and a kind of question I had as well too, very similar, but this is from Carlo. He says, Steve, what are your thoughts on the future of rock music? The future looks grim. In some cases it does. What do you think of that? The future of rock music.
The one thing that has happened with a lot of rock stuff is it's kind of become inaccessible, because it's the radio is not, you know, playing the real heavy stuff. You know, there's certain underground radios and FM stations that don't get a lot of recognition. They're, you know, tied into college radio stations, internet radio stations and stuff like that. But you know, in order for it to really come back, it has to go into the really big mainstream P1 radio stations again. And I think that what made the 60s, 70s, and 80s so popular is that they had songs that you could sing along with, and songs that were positive, that were uplifting. This is what made it so fun. I mean, during the 60s and the 70s, I almost got drafted into the Vietnam War because I was right at that age. But I remember there was a lot of protest songs going on, and they had very deep lyrics in the late 60s and the early 70s in particular. And I, you know, it was really cool that people were making so much effort to write songs in protest to that. But then again, there was also these songs that they're just about having a great time and partying and just living your life. And that carried on into the 80s. And radio loved it because the people loved it. And it was so user-friendly. And I think that that's one of those things where a lot of people have lost their way. Sure, you might like the real heavy stuff with the drop, you know, the drop A tuning and everything. But you know, the thing is you got to think, okay, what's going to bring it back? And that's going to be making it accessible to the listener. I mean, we have a lot of kids in our audience, because, you know, we have the people that listen to us originally, we have their kids, and sometimes their kids there also. Truly. So we have 3 different generations there listening to our stuff. and they're out there singing along with our songs, like Blondes and Black Cars and all that. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
going, there you go. See, their parents listen to that, and they have the kids singing along with it. So that's something that I think is going to have to come back, is that sing-along anthem type rock stuff. It can be heavy, sure,
Mm-hmm.
but it's got to be accessible as far as singing along with it and everything, and having the lyrics so that it relates to everybody.
I agree. And here on the show too, another band that gets brought up a lot too is Kiss. One of my first favorite bands was Kiss. Ace Frehley was my first guitar hero, and love him or hate him, Kiss. You'll see generations. You'll see 3 or 4 generations of people at a concert, and it's cool. And
I think they are more generational than any band out there.
they probably are.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I think they are. But we're seeing it with rock bands. We talked about another band off the air. We're talking about a friend of ours, Mark Kendall from Great White. Great White's another band that has that same thing. I think anybody from that era, like your Slaughters, your Warrants, your, all you guys from that alum back then, as long as you're doing it right, which you've done, or else you wouldn't have the ticket sales and the album sales that you have now. So you're doing a great job that way. We're seeing these generations, they're passing the torch. Some of them are becoming musicians, playing your music and studying your music, studying your guitar techniques. So it's really, really cool to see all that stuff kind of come full circle like that.
It is really cool. I mean, it's. I'm glad to be out there playing again. I mean, it just 4 years ago today we were just talking about this, and now here we are 4 years later. We've been on, touring for almost 4 years now, and we got a new album out, an EP and everything, and everything's going really well. It's charting. It's number 1 on the Billboard hard rock album sales, and so I'm going, wow, this is kind of deja vu. I mean, we would like it to keep going that way.
Sure.
I think it'll take, bands that are really making it, accessible to the listener to bring it back again.
Mm-hmm.
Like I was just mentioning in our previous conversation.
Yeah, I'm really happy for you for 2 things. Number 1, I see how happy you are, like you're smiling. It's hard to fake that. So I have a genuine feeling from you that, number 1, I'm playing guitar. Like, I know you never stop playing guitar, but you're playing guitar. You're back with some of the boys. You're having a success with it, and that's very rewarding. People are receiving it. They get it. They still get it. Haven't stopped getting it. So that's really, really cool. As a guitar player, I don't think there could be a cooler feeling than that.
It is a really cool feeling, and I did drop out of the scene for a long time because I was doing the clinics and everything, and then I opened up a music school and all that and kept that going. And I did a solo album called Network 23, just with my name, Steve Lynch, Network 23. And that was fairly soon after Autograph split up. That was 1994, actually. But then the record company that I was with fell apart. I couldn't release it till 10 years after that, so I released it in 2004. And so, it's on... CD Baby, that's one way you can get it.
Okay.
And so I'm going to re-release it because I'm going to remaster it and re-release it.
Good.
And because I think that people do want to hear that, stuff that I'm still writing. It's definitely, a different thing than what Autograph was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But, there was my writing with Autograph, just like it is today, my writing with this group and these people that are now a part of Autograph. And then there's a separate type of writing that shows a whole other side of me.
Nice.
And that's, the real ethereal stuff, we were talking a little bit earlier today. Mm-hmm. And, I was telling you that I was into reading a lot, and, I'm really into philosophers, and spiritual things. And I'm really into Henry David Thoreau and Ralph Waldo Emerson, along with Friedrich Nietzsche. And especially with Thoreau and Emerson, they had such a command of the language that it brought you into a thinking process that, and their philosophies and everything opened you up so much that it really adds to your playing. And I noticed when I was reading about these kind of things and really opening up my mind, my writing changed and my writing opened up. And all of a sudden, I had all these different ideas that I didn't have before. And I actually, when I was doing the clinics back in the early 90s, I had on the last page, I had a 32-page booklet that I gave out to everybody. And on the last page, it had a suggested reading thing on there with Henry David, Thoreau and Emerson and all these different writers in these books that I thought were just profoundly, influential. And so I mentioned those books, and a lot of people wrote to me and said the clinic was awesome, but I learned more from that last page about me and about life and about philosophy and about spirituality than I'd ever known my whole life. And so they thanked me for that last page,
Oh, wow.
of what I had suggested to them, and what it did for their playing, and what it did for their thinking, and what it did for their insights. And so I'm really glad that I had that kind of an influence on them.
For sure. So what happened for them and what happened for you, because you shared it, it's almost like having a
Yes.
locked door in a brand new home. You move into this house, you never open up that door, and that little
Right.
that little section of the brain for you and for them was never really turned, or was never opened or turned on. And by opening your mind to, different literature, exposing yourself to different things, look what it's done now for you and for countless others. I really like that. It's a very, very cool, something I've never been shared that with on the show before. I love that.
Yeah, and when people do get into that, I mean, check out Henry David Thoreau, check out Ralph Waldo Emerson. For a radical approach, look at Friedrich Nietzsche. All of these thinkers are just so beyond what we encounter in everyday life. And they just open up like you said, open up a new door in your house. And your house is right here.
That's right.
So it's an amazing thing. It really is. And then once you read those, it brings you into reading other things, because then you start getting into it more and more.
Yeah.
The same thing with music. When I would listen to jazz, like Charlie Parker playing on the saxophone, I would listen to that, and all of a sudden my phrasing on guitar would start changing. And because what you listen to, that becomes of what your playing is as well. So listening to different types of music, like classical music, and listening to like Jean-Luc Ponty play the violin, and different styles of players, it brings you into a whole different realm that you can really benefit from.
Agreed for sure. Here's a nice little toss of a shout out to your label from Neil Banbury. Says, Steve, congrats on signing with Dave Ellison's EMP label group. Dave's a great guy, born about 40 miles from where he lives in Minnesota and still stays active in the area. That's very cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, that's very cool. Absolutely.
And Coffee Drinker 71 says, these are all amazing influences. It's funny, too, how you mentioned Alan Holdsworth earlier, too, someone who really, really put a fire under Eddie's butt,
Yeah, that's right. I heard that later on.
Yeah.
That he had that influence on him as well. Well, we're like a week apart.
That's
in
right.
Age, like I said before, I'm a week older than him, and so we ate from the same bowl of Cheerios.
Yes, that's what you said. I love that analogy.
That were and all these new guitar players are coming along, and we're going, wow, check this guy out. He's way out there. When I first heard Holdsworth, I just went, I have no idea what this guy's doing.
Yeah.
And even trying to figure him out, his scales and everything. And I think Steve Vai. Yes, I was reading something that he said about him because Alan Holdsworth caught my eye in the article that he was being interviewed in, and he said that he's like the hardest guy to figure out because you just don't know where his mind's at.
Yeah.
He's playing chromatic, he's playing these whole tone scales and everything, but then he mixes it all together along with harmonic minors, melodic minors, and everything, and his passages and everything. The way he puts everything together and puts it into a blender, you just don't know what he's thinking, but it comes out perfect.
Yeah. I imagine those days long because that was long before the YouTube days and things like that. These guys sitting there hearing the recordings, what is he doing, trying to figure that out. Nowadays, you could sit there and watch it on YouTube, get a bit of an idea. But back then, man, you're on your own.
Yeah, you're completely on your own. Back in '78 when I was listening to him,
yep,
it's like back then they actually did have cassette machines, which
Yep.
was a wonderful thing.
Sure.
Instead of when I first started playing, it was wearing out that spot on the album. You
Dropping
go
the
out and
needle.
buy a $5 album, then I'd bug my dad to say, I've worn out spots on this album. It was like the album Are You Experienced was one of them, of course,
Yeah.
and then Led Zeppelin 1 and 2. And so I'd get money from him,
Go get another one.
$5 to go get another album and wear out the spots on that one too, where the solos were.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing, though.
With the cassette, you didn't have to do that. And then later on, now you have this plethora of guitar players out there that are showing you everything down to the note. You want to learn Cliffs of Dover? Just go,
Yep.
go look it up, and you'll find hundreds of guitar players out there showing you how to do it. Not that they're all correct on it,
but their versions.
You will find somebody eventually that is spot on with it.
That's right. That's why I suggest you always have to watch a bunch of videos because no one actually ever does anything 100% accurate other than the artist. I don't care who you are. So go watch 6 videos and take 6 different interpretations and make them your own and still put your own spin on it as well too.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. And one person that was really good at describing things, and that was Guthrie Govan.
Yes.
I don't know if you know who he is.
Oh, for sure.
And he's just a great player. I love the way he plays the fretless guitar, that French-made guitar that he plays. It's just an amazing technique that he has on that. I tried playing one, and they are really tough. Even though I want to get better at it, I want to get one of those, but they are tough to play because you don't have the fret.
I know.
To go up to and stop you.
Yes.
You have to play right above that, and the vibrato is done like on a classical guitar where it's back and forth rather than up and down. So you have to learn all these different techniques. It's kind of like combining a guitar and a violin together.
Yep.
Okay, so you have to rethink everything. And your chordal playing, all those fingers have to be right where the fret marker is. Otherwise, they're out of pitch.
Oh, yeah, sound horrible.
So I watched his playing. I really like his playing with Porcupine Tree.
Okay.
They're one of my favorite bands because they're so experimental, and they have the heaviness to them, but then they have so many dynamics in their songs, and their arranging and their production is just amazing. And then I was glad when he joined Porcupine Tree.
Yeah.
Because I thought, wow, great guitar player joining a great band. So very cool stuff.
You know who else is really good too? And I just don't get that instrument. I love it, but I don't think I could ever play a fretless guitar. And he's coming on the show soon, is Bumblefoot. Another amazing, and that's a hard rock sound. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah.
He's with Sons of Apollo right now, and rock and roll. I mean, and then he'll jump on his double neck. He'll do some crazy riffs on the kind of the really nice vibrato stuff on the fretless. Then he jumps over to the 6-string electric and he'll do like the fast legato scales and stuff like that. So he can combine both, which is cool. So that's kind of neat.
That's very awesome.
Yeah. It's Tracy. I can't pronounce her last name. I want to say Rare, Roehr. She says, "Hi, Steve. I have no idea what you're talking about." This is going back to some of the theory. But you sound great when you play. Congrats on the album. And that's the thing.
Oh, well, thanks very much. I appreciate that.
A million guitar players are going to love you. And there's also people that don't know anything about instruments at all. They know good music when they hear it, and that's why they're here as well, too. Speaking of another good guitar player, Craig Rendels. He's jumping in from Russia. He says, "Hey, everyone, greetings from Russia. Nice to see Steve on the show." Craig's working with George Lynch closely, building the limited edition Bone guitars. I think doing like 10 or 15 of them. So
there you go. Perfect.
Yeah, very cool. Let me see. I'm going to jump over to another question I had here too. I asked you this off the air and just want to get a feel because I found that you turn out to be exactly like myself when this happens. When you go to pick up a guitar for the first time, for the day, or you're at a music store, do you go to a favorite riff or cliche and describe that feeling when you pick up a guitar?
You always jump into that comfort zone.
Yep.
And you always play those riffs that you've been playing forever. And it's just the automatic thing to do. I think that it's just that, picking it up, and initially just the first thing you do is I jump into A Dorian and I play my A Dorian riffs, and that seems to be my comfort zone right there, And I think that everybody does that. But like I said earlier, a good way to break out of that is if you plug in without just playing without an amplifier, plug in and try a different sound, it gets you to go away from that real quick. So each different sound makes you play slightly differently.
I agree. And there's a thing with me, I don't get it. And because I like to play guitar, I play guitar every day. But if I go into a music store, and I've had many years retail experience in music stores, even when I worked in the music stores, I would not plug in unless it's almost like Michigan J. Frog. Remember the old cartoon? So when the customers would leave and they'd scatter, I'd plug in and play. As soon as the door would chime and the customer would come out, I'd stop playing. And to this day, I don't work in music retail, but if I go into a music store and Buddy will say, grab that and try it out. And even like my boy, we go to the music store. Very, very rarely do I pick up a guitar, and God forbid do I plug it in. I'm just too intimidated by either the kids or just intimidation. Surely you never had that problem, but what do you say to people that have that problem?
Yes, I still have that
problem. Do you? Okay. Okay.
I think for a lot of players, it never goes away. And nowadays, there are so many shredders out there. Mm-hmm. There's millions and millions of guys that can play a million notes per minute, but that kind of goes back to where, you have to listen to, and you have to know that has already been done. Mm-hmm. And there is guys out there that can play amazingly fast, but you have to really concentrate more on your writing and your own technique and everything. It's nice to be able to rip it up, but you have to really think about what's really going to work for you and in a band and everything, and writing wise and all that kind of stuff, and being original. But yeah, I'll pick up a guitar and, I'll I'll do a few riffs, that I'm really comfortable with when I play in front of people. Of course,
Yeah.
you're going to do that.
Yeah.
Ones that you're not going to make a mistake on
Yeah.
right away. You don't try to do your hardest stuff, especially if you're not warmed up.
No.
That's just a natural thing to do, and I'm sure that Eddie does that. I'm sure that even Yngwie does that. And Steve Vai and everybody. I'm sure that they always grab onto something and
Sure.
and play something that they're pretty familiar with.
Yeah, just a little safety net, just a bit of a safety net.
You bet.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
So you working with Dean Guitarists at the moment? Is that what your main instrument of choice is? How's it like working with those guys?
Dean Guitars, and I've also had this guy building me a couple guitars who's up in Jacksonville, which is about a 4-hour drive for me. And I go up and I pick out the wood, and his name's Dale Robertson, and he's built me a couple of just amazing guitars. He's on my second one right now, and but the first one that he built, I went in and I said, "Can we get the neck a little bit thinner?" And because I wanted it to just be nothing about speed. Now, once I have those done, then I can take them into Dean and I can say, "Now let's mass produce these things." But it's a little bit more difficult when you're working with a big company like that, rather than a one-on-one situation where you can just get somebody to just do the slight variations on them until you get it exactly perfect. Then once you got it, they can scan it and they can do whatever they need to do to get the exact specifics on it, and then they can put them into mass production. That's what I plan on doing with them.
Gotcha. Are you still much of a Floyd guy? Like, I mean, back in the 80s, actually with Kahlers and things like that on some of your guitars, especially in the, the old...
I was into the Kahlers in fact, I endorsed Kahlers for many years. Like, I think I played Jackson for about 8 years, and they were always with Kahlers on them. For some reason, I just like the Kahlers because of the fact that I just like the fact that they were all self-contained, and you didn't have to have the springs on the back and everything, and they just seemed to stay in pitch so perfectly. And I like the fact that you could adjust the spring tension like you can with the Floyd too. You can take the springs off and change the spring tension, but I got used to them, and I think that's what the main thing is. And I like the fact that you could pull up really far on them. And if you remember back when Floyd first came out, unless you routed out the guitar, you couldn't pull up on them.
I know.
They just went back to the same spot.
That's right.
And I thought that was the coolest part about using a whammy arm, was being able to pull up on it.
Yes.
And with the Kahlers, you could do that, but with the beginning Floyd, you couldn't. And so that was another reason why I really stayed with the Kahlers for so long. But now I'm using the Floyd Rose Pro.
Nice.
And
okay.
I'm always satisfied with that.
And you're probably flush mount with those, or do you have them float too?
Do I have them what?
Do you have them float now with Floyd's?
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're completely carved out. In fact, on the first guitar that he made for me, it wasn't carved out quite enough. And I said, hey, look, this has got to go up at least 2 whole steps. At least that. And so then he carved out a little bit more, and he says, you got plenty enough now. And so now, no matter how far I pull up, there's plenty of room there, so it's not going to bottom out on me.
So it's satisfactory for you for sure.
Yes.
Next question I had for you. So when you guys broke basically back in the day, we had like the onset of MTV and here in Canada we had our Much Music, which was kind of a copy of that, whatever the kind of a light version of MTV and all these other things, your VH1s, all these things that come out. What do you think is different about the business today for bands getting that exposure, and maybe what are some of the we have our YouTubes and things like that now. What do you think is different about the business today, and what are some of the things that might still be the same?
Well, back then, that's all we did have was, except for if you watch the Saturday night programs like, oh God, what was that guy's name? Don. I can't even think of his name, but it was like back in the early 70s where you'd be able to watch that show on midnight every Saturday night, and they'd have all these live bands on.
Not Kirshner.
Yes, that's it.
Okay.
Yeah, Don Kirshner. Yes, that's right. And
shows my age.
But MTV really was the only thing back then, like you said, until VH1 came along, and they had the Canadian version of it, and Europe had their version of it as well. But nowadays you have social media, and that really gets the artist out there that is unknown. And you can, in YouTube, of course, once you get on social media and you have your song being played on YouTube, you can get tons of hits on that, and you can advertise the hell out of yourself before you didn't have that. Because record companies, they don't get behind a lot of the rock bands and put the promo that they used to into them. Because remember, magazines like Circus and Hit Parader and all that, and they were huge, and they were a good tool to market bands back then. And then you had, along with the different radio IDs that you would do, and MTV and all the radio play and everything that you would try to get. Nowadays, it's more social media, and you can promote yourself if you're an unknown band. But trying to get a record company behind you, that's a little bit tough to do. They do get behind some bands, like, of course, ones that are going to be, pretty sure, like Alter Bridge, and Avenged Sevenfold, and, different bands like that, where they know they're going to get some radio play. But you pretty much have to have a name, already going for you in order to get that kind of push behind you with a record label nowadays.
Agreed. A couple other questions over here in the chat. Nemtal says, would like to see Steve do some guitar playing. I don't think you're set up for guitar playing tonight, are you? Do you have any guitars?
No, I'm not, unfortunately. Yeah.
No problem. That's okay. We can have you back on again, too. We can do a performance sometime.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, I'm having so much fun here. Let's do it again tomorrow.
Oh, there you go. There you go. My wife would have me do it every night of the week if I could do it. It's one of those things, if I don't have good things to say, I'd rather just wait and save the good content flavor, but I'll have you back anytime.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to try to get, there's a bunch of other questions about 10:07. We'll be wrapping up at 10:30 here, so I want to try to get as many of the fan questions. I'm going to sacrifice a lot of mine tonight for the fans. But here's a question. With the success of Turn Up the Radio, I want to compare this, not to compare your band, but another band I like a lot is Extreme. I like Gary Sharon. I like Gary and Van Halen, who's there briefly. I like Nuno as a guitar player. More Than Words was such a huge hit for those guys. And, More Than Words was a hit, crazy hit, and wasn't necessarily one of my favorites. A lot of favorites with the women and, things like that. But that song was so big for them that it kind of like painted them into a corner. Turn Up the Radio for you guys, I mean, it's a household name, whether you know your band or know you as a guitar player, whatever, they know that song. Has that become a blessing, a curse, a combination of both when it comes to writing new material? In this case, you get off your ass, new record you have. How has that song affected you going into new material ever since? I
don't think there is any curse with that song. Not that I associate with it anyway, because, when you have a song as successful as that, and that has carried you through the years, we've had other songs that have gotten a lot of radio play, but nothing like that, obviously, because it's called Turn Up the Radio. And I think that, that it is a blessing when you can say, hey, remember the band Autograph? And they go, yeah, kind of. And they say, remember the song Turn Up the Radio? And they go, oh, yeah. You see, that song, they relate to that more so than the name of the band.
Right.
And so I think that's a blessing in that way. It hasn't painted us into a corner, because what it's done is basically, let's write another one like that. And I think that we have had some, but when, our second and third albums came out, it was the time when Bob Summers, the original owner from RCA, passed away, and Bob Buziak came in and completely changed the whole horizon of the whole RCA Records program. He fired 50% of the staff in New York and in LA, and hired on a bunch of young guys, young yuppies that
kind of get it.
Really didn't know anything about the music business. And so we suffered from that. And it wasn't only us. It was, remember Mr.
Yes.
They suffered from it. Of course, the Eurythmics suffered from it. Kenny Rogers, the Pointer Sisters. There were all these different groups that had albums come out at the time that hardly anybody even heard of, heard about those albums, even though they were mega stars. And so I know that it wasn't just us, because I listened to the albums, especially like the third album, and I go, God, that's got some amazing songs on it. The third album, Loud and Clear, it's just because we were really polished at that point, and that, as far as the recording goes, is our best sounding album, because we recorded it with the late great Andy Johns, and so therefore I think it definitely should have had. There's a couple songs on there that definitely should have had the radio play that Turn Up the Radio did. But things like that happen.
Yeah.
And so people think of you as a one-hit wonder, but I go, you know what? At least you have a hit.
That's right. That's right.
And so, and I, we were talking earlier today. You mentioned, like I'm in the top 10 of your most underrated guitar players. And again, I come back and I say, it's better than being the 10 most overrated.
I agree 100%. That's very well said. I agree.
So then that's the way I look at it. And I've never really, considered myself to be a guitar god. I
Hmm.
just wanted to do what I wanted to do, and that is create something new and have people enjoy it. I've never tried to aspire to be, just a mega guitar god. I didn't really look at myself that way.
No.
What I always did was I tried to just put in good solos for the songs that matched the songs really well and complemented them. And that's what I've always tried to do, is be very melodic and always create something. When I come up with a solo, I look at it like it's the same thing as lyrics or a melody line. You don't use the same lyrics or melody line for another song.
Hmm.
So therefore, what you do is you create a solo for that song, and you come up with new ideas that way. So I would force myself to always play different ideas in each different song that I was creating for, rather than repeating myself ever. Now you'll hear little things that sound similar, but you'll never hear the exact same thing ever in any of my solos.
Well, that's really cool about that too. Is just this morning, I like to get in the mindset of the artist as I do an interview that day, and obviously throughout the whole week. But I watched your title track video that's out there right now, and I thought, okay, I had no idea where the guitar solo was going to go. I'm waiting for the build up, and I love the guitar solo. But I'm really glad the path you took on that. It wasn't, it wasn't proving anything. It fit, a couple nice little taps, little signature taps, but you weren't proving a statement. It was written for the song, and it was what was called for in the song. And that takes a lot of restraint. A lot of guys are just going to say, well, this is what they expect of me. They got to see the 80s Steve Lynch. You did what the song called for, and you didn't step on toes. It wasn't all about you. So that's pretty awesome.
And that's the thing, is I listen to it over and over again. This is the way I write solos, is I have the band record, or I listen to what we've done in the studio without a solo on it. And I listen to that section right in there over and over and over again, where the vocal leaves off and I start my solo. And then when the solo finishes and the vocal comes back in, and I try to fill that spot in there with just like what's right for the song. And if you listen to some of the old Autograph stuff, you'll go, well, it's more of a melody line than a solo in there. But then you listen to some of Eddie's stuff, early on and later, it's more of a melody, really, that he's using in the song instead of a solo. Sometimes because that's all it calls for, and using that kind of restraint is sometimes very necessary.
Yeah.
Because I could have blazed through that whole part and everything, but I decided to use something that was more dynamic. Sure, it has a beginning, a little bit of a fast intro and stuff, and then I have different things that I throw in there that I've never ever done before, certain intervals and everything, and then it just came into like just a fast double-handed pentatonic thing at the very end, and I thought that works great. And I do it in sections.
Yes.
I figure out the first part that I'm going to do, and then I think, okay, how do I complement that first part? How do I answer that first question that I asked? And then I just take it like from there. Then ask another question, throw another answer in, then you cap it off with the final answer at the end of the solo.
I love it. And just so we don't forget of something that's really important right now, too, this is going to be my last question I'm going to ask you. I'm going to try to get as many. I won't be able to get all of them from the chat. I'll try to ask a few more questions from the chat. But let's talk about the new record, Get Off Your Ass. You can tell if that's a metaphor about the fans getting out to the concert, or if that's maybe about you guys getting a new record out. I don't even know what that means. It could just be, hypothetical. But tell us about going from conversation with the guys, let's get back together, let's do this, let's write some music, we've got a new record out. Tell us a little bit about the thought process that went into the new record and where it is today.
Well, it's all inclusive. It's all of those things that you said.
Nice.
And many more. Where I got the title originally from was, it was just a normal day. I'd gotten up and I'd made coffee and I was watching the news, and I was sitting there on the couch, and I'm thinking, I got a lot of stuff to do today. I've got to get off my ass and get this stuff done.
Nice.
And I just thought, that's really catchy. Everybody uses that all the time. Get off your ass, And so I immediately called up the singer, Simon, and I said, Simon, I got to do a song called Get Off Your Ass. And that eventually made it into, the title of the album as well, because we all liked it so much. And the feedback that we got from other people was so positive. And so then we were throwing back and forth, ideas as far as the lyrics go and melody line and everything. And it just came together so fast. And it came together that way. Sometimes songs are an accident. Like Turn Up the Radio was. That was something that we were just playing. I started playing this riff, that and everybody went what is that? You know, when we were at rehearsal, and this was right before we went to the studio to record, you know, the first Autograph album, Sign In Please, and they all got up on stage and at rehearsal, and we started playing it and dinking around with it. A half hour later, we had all the music to it. Then we all started writing ideas down for lyrics and everything. And the original lyrics were turned up the cassette machine. That's the way we recorded the first demo, too.
No way.
But then we thought, let's turn it to radio, because that's more radio friendly. And the funny thing is, when we got done recording it, RCA didn't want us to put it on the album.
You're kidding
Because
me.
they said, that's not going to get any radio play. We want you to do Send Her to Me as the first release. And we go, but this has radio in it.
Oh, geez.
You know, this is obviously
Radio play.
the clear choice, you know.
Yeah.
And so they said, no. Well, we recorded it in the studio anyway at the record plant. And then when they heard it, they went, yeah, okay, let's put this on the album. Then, you know, it became, you know, so that all these radio stations wanted it, and we recorded like 2 days. We were in the studio doing station IDs, you know, saying this is Autographs telling you to turn up the radio at WCKQ or whatever, you know, whatever station it may be.
Yep.
And the radio stations went wild with it.
Of course.
And the rest is history. And then, of course, RCA was saying it was our idea to put that on.
Of course.
And I go, no,
Yeah.
that's not true. It was our idea. We had to fight to get that song on the album.
You know what I like about that is I think it's
that's the way it works. But that's the way that kind of happened, was that get off your ass thing. It's happened the same way. It was kind of like an accident, you know. But it's really all about motivating people, and especially like how we did the video. It shows these kids sitting around playing video games and just not really doing anything with their life, you know, and getting out there and just doing stuff, really physically doing stuff, rather than just sitting around playing video games or playing around on your computer or watching TV.
Clean your room,
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be influential for everything. It can even be used like say your team's falling behind. You know, play this song through the speakers at the stadium and get them to get off their ass.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just motivational. And that's what the whole song, you know, the basis for the whole thing was motivating my own ass. So I thought, why not turn this into everybody's motivation?
I love it. I love in the video too. You got the big bouncer guy. He's got holding both the daughter and the son with the palms of their hands with their foreheads, and the mess all over the floor, laundry dirty all over the place. The kids playing Grand Theft Auto. You know, that was awesome. So very, very cool. It's a good analogy. And we all need to do that sometimes. You know, we all kind of get complacent and lazy sometimes. So very, very cool. And one last thing about turn up the radio, what I think is going to be interesting in the future, not that far down the road, is we're losing radio. And I've worked in radio before, not that I have any vested interest in it anymore, in traditional FM radio, but I mean, I don't work there, but I did. And we're getting cars now without even an FM tuner in the you know, so I think that turn up the radio, your song and now we're talking about generations that are, you know, come to see your concerts. Pretty soon, some of our generation is going to say, so Dad, what's this radio thing that they're talking about? What is radio?
Right.
You know, so we need to hang on to it.
Everything's going to be a podcast.
I know.
You know? Everything's, yes.
And as much as I love people to tune into things like this that I do with a podcast, and there's a million good ones out there. The traditional radio, remember the old theater of the mind, the old theater, like this is before my time, of course, but not much before my time. And I know some people that still do radio plays, you know, with all the sound effects and the aliens coming in and, woo, you know, all this kind of stuff. That was huge back in the day, you know, like War of the Worlds and things like that. You know, people actually thought the world was ending because of a radio play. You know, so we need to hang on to that.
True.
Yeah. So I'm gonna try to get as many fast questions as I can over in the chat. We're just about 10 minutes away. So Frank JC says, how is the touring going? He's read online that rock is dying. They said a long time ago, it's still going strong. I know I see ticket sales great for your shows and everybody else's shows, but how do you think the touring is going with you and the fans coming out?
The touring's going very well, and what's really cool in the shows is that we're playing 4 songs right now, soon to add on a 5th one from the new album. And when we play those live, they get the same kind of reception as when we play our other songs that people are very familiar with. And and that's really cool to see. You know, of course, Turn Up the Radio, which we end the set with, you know, is still the big one, you know, because everybody just loves singing along with that. I mean, the audience is always louder than we are on stage. It's singing in that, you know, and so that's really a cool thing. But the new songs are being accepted very, very well. Really good reception from them.
Good. And just so people don't forget too, down below in the description of this video, I have links to both your Facebook page and to your website where they can purchase some music, they can find out the tour, they can find all kinds of stuff, biography information. So have a look at that.
Yeah, they can become a fan. They can just sign into Facebook, or Autograph Band.
Yep.
They can go to autographband.com and same thing on Twitter, same thing on Instagram, so they can go check it out.
Perfect.
And purchase the album through there, or there's many avenues that they can go through. Spotify, they can go through whatever, to download the album, exactly. Apple, everything.
It's every medium pretty much, and that's good.
Yes, exactly, yeah.
Celebration of Sound says, love Steve's playing. Carlo Santin says, that's great advice, Steve, and a great approach to your art, finding your voice and having the courage to go with it, so it's important for any art form. And I know Carlo's a photographer and a musician, so I know that can apply to photography too. You can watch all these guys, and then they'll say, enough is enough, now I need to just shut everything off and do my things, like you said with guitar.
Right.
Dan Wilhite's jumping in, says, what up? He's late, but he's going to check out he'll probably replay and watch the program. This is nice. This is a nice comment. Mark Taylor, he's a regular on the program. He says, I don't think I've ever heard a guest share so much great information. Nice.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Very nice to hear. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mark. And I agree with that. I've learned a lot, and I have to sometimes watch these shows back when I get time to absorb everything that's been said too, because tonight you've just been a plethora of great information. So I have to go back and relive it as well too. I'll be making notes as well. Okay, he said this. This will help me. I sometimes I ask questions that, okay, how can I better myself as a guitar player? And I'll go back and I'll take notes. So tonight was a good experience for me too. Let me see. Good.
That's great to hear.
Yeah. Carl Santin says, Steve, I could listen to you talk all night. This is great. What is the most rewarding aspect of what you're doing now in 2017?
And you know what that is probably educating people and opening up their minds a little bit. I think that is, and bringing the music to them, of course. But I think one of the things that probably really, benefits myself is teaching other people.
Perfect. And you learn from teaching. That is a fact. There's no doubt about that. You learn from your students.
Well, thank you. Yeah, that's no doubt. No doubt about that. And that goes in everyday life. The more you expand yourself and the more you take in and the more you can absorb, the better you are and the better person you become.
That's like Rudy Sarzo was on the show the other night. He was talking about Randy Rhoads, rest in peace, and saying that's one of the reasons why he was such a great guitar player, because he taught so many hours a day that he had he was a sponge absorbing from his students as well too. Very, very cool.
Yes, and it makes you look at things in a different way too.
It does.
Each time you explain something, there are similarities from the previous time that you explained it, but then you think, okay, what's another way to say this so that it inspires them more, or so that they understand it more, and you get better at it as time goes on, and you become a better teacher and you become more of an influence in their lives. And I think that's a really good thing to monitor yourself by.
For sure. And I know you've been a big influence on a lot of people's lives, so that's a great feather in your cap. Blimpus Rock Videos, I'm going to try to skip through these really quickly, but he says, did you ever get a chance to play with Michael Angelo Battillo?
No, but I've met him a couple of times, and one of the nicest guys ever, and his technique is just amazing.
Crazy.
And I've noticed that he has these kind of muter things
the dampeners
on his guitar when he's doing the two neck guitar thing, the double neck guitar. And because I'm just building one right now. It's going to be called the SL Muter. And in fact, it's one of my students, Kevin Pike, that I mentioned earlier, who was doing very well. Him and I are actually designing it together.
Nice.
It's a very simple design. It's about the size of a locking nut.
Okay.
And it fits on the other side of your locking nut, and it just comes right over the top. And then that way, when you are doing that technique, you're not getting the string noise from the other strings that you're not playing on. You don't have to mute with this part of your palm. You can actually just have that on, and it completely mutes out the strings. And it's really easy to get on and off. And it's one of those things where I'll probably sell it for like, $9.99 or something like that. And it's something that you can just use for years.
When do you think we may see that?
Pardon me?
When do you think we might see that?
I would say within probably the next, you'd see it in stores probably within a year, because we're pretty much done with the design and everything. We're pretty much all set.
Just got to get the marketing and all that stuff and distributors and all that kind of stuff.
Yes, exactly. So it takes a little bit of time,
Sure.
We're in the process of trademarking it right now and everything. So
I'll watch for that and I'll share that when it comes out.
It takes a little bit of time. But the design's really simple, and I think everybody will really enjoy it.
Good. Well, thank you for sharing that with us for sure. So you heard that here. That's awesome. So
Yeah.
some people, I'm just going to say hi. Dirty Apes Inc. says hi. Ty Price.
Hello.
It says there's a resurgence of classic rock with younger bands. Greta Van Fleet, who I love to death, myself personally, is an example. Very young and very cool. Mr. BH, Bruce jumping in, says, hey, Eric and everyone. Dan Wilhite says, hey, Steve,
Very
thanks
cool.
for sharing with us tonight. I'm late coming in, so it may have been mentioned, but am I correct that Michael Anthony played bass on some of the first Autograph album? Is that any truth to that?
No,
Okay.
no, it was all Randy Rand.
Okay.
But, Michael, half the time that we were on tour with Van, is Michael, he played that Jack Daniels bass, you know, and he'd walk off stage with that bass still on, carrying a bottle of Jack Daniels and walking into our dressing room, uncapping it and taking a big swigging off it and then handing it right to me. And then I'd do the same thing. We'd just pass that bottle around till it was gone.
There you go.
And so just great memories. What a guy. Great guy to hang with.
He just seems like the spirit of the party for sure. Well, back in the day, Alex, and I mean, there was a lot of spirits back in that day, but Michael, yeah.
Oh, no doubt.
Yeah. We won't get too far into the spirits, but that's cool. Good. Thank you for sharing that with us for sure.
We all know it was the 80s. And,
of course. What happens in the 80s kind of
was.
stays in the 80s. That's right. Some of it stays in the 80s. Let me see. Justin Grady says, so we're talking a little bit about your Floyd's now. Have you ever heard, and maybe you already use this, something I talk about on the show all the time, my good friend Adam Reaver, you may know him from FU-Tone. Have you heard of his products?
No, I haven't.
I'm going to send you a link later on. You may or may not thank me later. I don't know, but it's a really easy, simple way to hot rod your guitars. Brass blocks, all kinds of extra, basically stuff that, number one, brings hidden tone out of your guitar that you didn't know you were missing. You might think but you are missing some, you just don't know about it. And then things that will kind of give longevity to the guitar, like stainless steel parts and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, so no corrosion. I'll send you some literature on it, and I think you'll dig it.
Yeah, please do send me that link because I'm very interested in that. And one thing on the guitars that I'm having this guy, Dale Robertson, build, Dale Roberts, I mean, I'm using stainless steel, and I love. They just there. I don't know what it is. They project more.
Yes.
So I just wanted to throw that in there. The stainless steel frets seem to be a really cool.
They do, and I'm having you break up a little tiny bit here. Hopefully, I haven't lost you. Can you still hear me? Okay.
But I'm still hearing you. Okay, it's probably me deteriorating.
No problem. Yeah, just a little bit of video. I think it's coming back now. Okay, there we go. We're getting a little bit back.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just our internet connection. That's okay. Yeah, stainless steel frets for sure. And this is from Darren. He's my really good friend. He's only 20, and he says the reason I'm such a fan of bands like Van Halen, Warrant, Guns N' Roses, and You and stuff like that is that they make music extremely fun and exciting, not just gangster or death music. I want to feel good with music.
That's right, exactly. Bring back the fun in it again.
Exactly.
And that's what we were talking about earlier, about those anthem type. I mean, they just one where you can sing along with it. You don't know how it is to be able to sing along with the chorus song, and that is really what's the part that is missing with music today.
I agree, 100%. Lastly in the chat, we've got David Ennis saying, hi, Eric. How are you? Bruce, Dan Wilhite, David Ennis. Rocamp56 says, great show, Steve and Eric. Humbucker Lover is jumping in. He runs a really cool talk show as well, too. He says, hey, guys, popping in to say hi. Mark.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Hi, guys.
Spanky McAllister says, hi, Eric. Steve seems like a great guest. And I just want to make sure, if I'm not saying your names here, I've already either acknowledged you or tried to get to one of your questions. I just want to make sure I don't miss anyone. And I do apologize if I have. Quentin James says, Midnight Special was awesome. What else am I missing here, possibly? Bear with me. Scott Daniel. Leave it to a record label to screw bands up. Yeah, it happened. Van Halen. Read the Van Halen book. Their labels were pretty brutal to them as well, too. Pennies on the dollar, and Rocamp56, great producer Andy Johns. I second that statement for sure.
Yeah.
Let me see here. Ty Price, you put in great solos that complemented the song. Very, very good. That's from Ty
Very
Price.
nice. Thank you for that.
Mr. C5150 says, saw Autograph at the Casbah, Manchester, New Hampshire, way back to your first album, 1985.
Very cool.
Nice. Yeah.
New Hampshire. We loved playing up there.
Here's a question from Neil Banbury. Says, did you reach out to Steve Plunkett when you were reforming Autograph?
Yes, we did.
Yeah.
And he's unable to do it. He's really busy with the television and the movie soundtracks that he's been doing for years now. And he said, "Well, I don't know if my voice would quite do it, after so many years." And that's the thing, is when a lot of artists get older, of course, the first thing that goes is the voice, and that's really hard to replicate those songs again live night after night. And that you can blow out your voice very easily. So, honestly, but anyway, he gave us his best wishes, and so we thanked him, and then we looked for Simon Daniels and found him.
That's commendable. Honestly, it is commendable by him. I mean, that's a hard thing. He probably, thinking about, and, looking at, this could be a really cool thing, but number one, he's busy. And number two, if he didn't think he could give his all, I respect that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. That's cool.
And he was very gracious about it. And, he thanked us for considering him and wished us well.
Very nice. John Kirshner says, Steve was part of that great Jackson Charvel print ad with a ton of other guitar players. I remember this one very well. Vinnie Vincent, Jakey Lee. Any memories of that photo shoot?
Oh, God. Yeah. Actually, there is a good one. And anybody that was on that photo shoot will remember Con Edison. The electricity went out, and Con Edison came down and tried to get it back on, but they were using so many lamps during that photo shoot with Glenn Furman. He was the photographer, and the photos, the lights just kept on pushing, shutting the power down, basically. And the funny thing is Steve Vai and I we kind of knew each other, from seeing each other a couple of times around the LA scene and all that before. But we started talking because he knew I was educated. I knew he was educated from Berkeley, and he knew I was educated, of course, from the Guitar Institute of Technology, which was what it was called back then.
Yep.
So we started playing around with these different ideas. Like he would show me something, I'd show him something. Like he showed me this really cool way to slide to different notes in the scale, where you couldn't even tell where the note ended and the slide began.
I like that style.
And it was like a really cool thing. And then I showed him some of these interval skips played in a sequence. And so sure enough, on the next album that Autograph did, I had some of the stuff that he showed me. Yeah. The next album he did, I went, busted. I hear you doing some of the stuff I showed you.
I love that.
And so, you pick up stuff like that from people all the time. And it was a very nice compliment,
of
for
course.
him and myself, getting from each other.
A nod to each
ideas
other.
from each other, and then when the power came back on, then we all posed for the picture, which ended up being a very long photo shoot because of all the people there and how long it took Con Edison to put the power back on and everything. But while me and Steve were exchanging these ideas, I broke a string.
Oh.
So I'm right down in the front row there, and what you see is me holding the guitar, and I look like I'm grimacing. But if you look really close, that broken string is in my mouth.
Love it.
You see, so there. You have to really zoom in on it, but that's what I'm doing. So I'm gritting my teeth like that. And,
so unintentionally, I'm an animal on the guitar. So yeah, I love it. That's hilarious. No, perfect. I love that. I remember that from the Guitar for the Practicing Musician or something like that back in those days, or whatever it was. Yeah. Awesome.
That was a huge article. That was a huge ad. I should say, because I don't think of any other magazine or photo shoot where it's had that many guitar players, up and coming guys, that were all in one shot like that.
That's a who's who.
Very cool.
And some of them probably aren't even with us today anymore. I'd have to go through a head count, but yeah, that's a real alumni right there for sure. It's an honor for any one of you guys to be part of it because you were there with your peers, for sure. Right,
exactly.
Yeah.
Classic photo.
Yeah, I love that. Wrapping up the evening, let me see here. FNAF Gamers jumping in, say is liking 82 Van Halen. Killer Show Eric from Humbucker Lover. Dan Wilhite says awesome show tonight. Steve is a guru. Thanks guys, you're very welcome.
All right, thank you for that. That's nice.
Max Raider 2 says great player, great guy. Quentin James says thumbs up number 31. Scott Daniels says excellent show tonight. And our very last comment for the evening, Carlo Santin says, Steve, I really hope you do the show again. You are a great musician and a fascinating guest. Thank you so much for the time tonight. Great show, Eric. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, and I'll be glad to come back anytime and do the show.
Awesome. I'll look forward to. Let's wrap it up with this. I'd like to have you back in, maybe spring of 2018. You've got some big things you were telling me off the air. Let's wrap it up with this. Tell us about the Monsters of Rock cruise, and then you've got some great stuff. That's just the start of 2018.
Yeah, that's February 2018. We got a couple of shows to do before then in Salt Lake City and Denver, and then we come right back I come right back to Tampa, and then I'm actually driving down to Miami from where the cruise leaves at, and then we're going off, and then we're going down to Jamaica. And as when you're in Jamaica, do as the Jamaicans do, which I'm not sure what that really means. But anyway, we're looking forward to that. That's always one of those things, like the festivals we do as well, is when we get together with all these guys that we knew from the 80s, you know, all these different LA bands and everything. It's like going to a high school reunion. You know, it's just the coolest thing because you talk about all these things that were going on back in that time and how everybody was a little bit competitive with each other back then because we were all vying for the same thing, which was success and radio play and all that kind of stuff and being the next big band off of the Sunset Strip. But nowadays it's so laid back and everybody's just older and wiser and they just really enjoy each other's company and kind of reminiscing about those old times and the stories and everything. It's just a really, really cool thing. And the Monsters of Rock cruise thing is very cool because people get a one-on-one, conversation with a lot of their favorite musicians that they grew up with and everything. And it's a tight-knit thing. It's a very cool thing because you get to talk to everybody on there.
That's good. I know. I hear that all the time. You see him day one, you see him day two, you see him day three. Oh, I'm gonna go grab a drink at the bar. Oh, I see him again. You know, so that's kind of cool. You're there. Yeah. Actually, that's what Rusty Cooley was saying when he did the John Petrucci universe, whatever that was called. And he said, you're hanging with your fans, and you're just one with the fans now. You know. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Wicked.
You know, and it's so cool because it's an intimate situation where you get to know your fans and the fans get to know the bands. It's just a great situation.
I love that. I would love to take part in that, but I wish you the greatest success with that, and I wish you a fantastic 2018. Everyone, go check out that record. Links are down below in the description for both Facebook and the website, and trust me, you won't regret it. It's a good rock and roll album that's going to make you remember all kinds of good moments in your life, sad moments, happy moments, everywhere in between. And also, rediscover, if you're a new fan to Autograph, go rediscover their back catalog. There's so much good music there to be had, and also for the guitar players. I mean, you're talking to one of the greatest guitar players on planet Earth, so have some fun with that.
Thank you. You're humbling me.
No problem. No, you're a very humble dude, man, and it's a pleasure to have you here. I learned a lot, and from the comments tonight too, I've got some goosebumps just from the feedback in the chat. Like people really enjoyed this, and I just pushed the buttons, and this happens because of the people that tune up and turning up the radio and turning up the YouTube. They're coming in.
There you go. That's it.
And they're enjoying it. I'm going to turn it over to my little man here in a second. He's going to give us the outro credits, tell us what his name is, what he's playing, and I'm going to say goodbye to you off the air. If you can hang on for about 25 seconds, say goodbye to you off the air. So everyone, have a fantastic Wednesday evening. Only a couple more days to go. Come tune in Friday night, same time, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I've got Dan Palmer from Death by Stereo and Zebrahead, who has a cooler mustache than me. The best mustache on the planet. It's 6 feet wide, one of those big old handlebars, and he's got a lot of Van Halen guitars. Going to have a look at that and listen. But I'm going to turn it over to Little Man, and we will see you real soon. Until next time, cheers, and thank you so very much for watching.
Thanks for having me on, Eric, and thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Thank you very much. I had a great time.
Rock and roll.
Hey, my name is Eric, and I'm playing the Frankenstrat guitar.
Video production services provided by Design 39 Media. Visit design39media.com for all your website, photography, and video production needs.